Hi, my name is Jim Carrillo, and this is a presentation on leveraging data dashboards using Power BI. I'm going to go through a few PowerPoint slides because it wouldn't be a presentation if it didn't have PowerPoint, and then we'll get into the meat of actually how to use Power BI. So Power BI is a business analytics tool by Microsoft, and what makes it an analytic tool as opposed to maybe just a tool that you can create graphs with like Excel and PowerPoint is the user that is using the tool that you create, the report, will be able to interact with the data and perform their own analysis. So, for example, if it's a financial report, maybe they may only want to look at their department's finances or a specific fund's finances, or maybe even just down at the object code level. Um, and that's what makes a visualization unique. Is a visualization, as opposed to just a graph, is a depiction of data that the person that is looking at that data, they have the ability to interact with it. Power BI is, I think I know of three different applications. There's the Power BI desktop application, there's the Power BI web application, and then there's the Power BI phone application. We're not going to really talk about the phone application, although it is totally cool. But the difference between the web application and the desktop application is that the web is where you store your reports that you want to share over the internet, and the desktop application is where you create the reports. Now, just like Excel has both online and desktop versions, and when Microsoft first came out with the online version, it could just barely do 10% of the things the desktop version can do, but now it's gotten a lot better. I kind of think that Microsoft will go in that same direction with Power BI, that eventually the web-based version will be able to create and edit reports as well as share reports. But for now, the desktop application is definitely more powerful in the creation of reports. So that's what we're going to use today as the desktop application, and we'll share with the web-based application. Power BI lets you import from so many different data sources. It's not even worth me going through all of them, but popular ones: Excel, a web link like maybe CSV data online, maybe an Excel file online, SQL, Postgres, you name it. Power BI does have an area inside of it called Power Query that you can actually use for data transformations. I don't know enough about this one, but I wonder why they just didn't use SQL. But they didn't. Instead, they used Power Query, and then they used a language called DAX, Data Analysis Expressions, for custom calculations. I felt that SQL should have just been fine, but I'm not on the Microsoft team, so I don't get the choice to give my input. So when you create visualizations, you're going to see that when we're in Power BI, you can create charts, graphs, tables, and we're going to focus on today a pivot table. And in that pivot table, you'll be able to apply filters and slicers so that there's an activity, or there's interactivity. The difference between a filter and a slicer, and this is my humble opinion, is a filter is a generic name for something that is done in the Microsoft's default menu, whereas a slicer is when you add it to the visualization and it looks pretty, and you can slide things. So in a sense, filters and slicers do exactly the same things. They filter the data out, but one is part of the visualization and one is just part of the standard Microsoft menu. We will show you how you can customize some of the appearance settings. I've never tried applying a theme. That might be nice. And then we're going to publish and share a report. We're going to share it through the Power BI service, and we're also going to share it through just some random website, Google Sites. So I've got this best practices here. I think I don't even want to read through this one, because when I read that second bullet, use appropriate visualizations for data representation, I thought, what was I thinking? What is an inappropriate visualization for? So we'll move that one. And finally, we get to the hands-on demonstration. And this is where we're going to actually look at Power BI. So let's start off, and we're going to set up a data file. I'm going to use Excel because most of us are familiar with Excel. I've exported this data from QSS, and it is the data that comes from the FAR 110. It's nothing more than the activity data that is happening, and it's separated by fund, account, cost center, all these different separations. And we can get into the basic elements is the beginning balance for the budget, the transfers, and so forth. You'll see here, I took that data and just created a normal pivot table from Excel. While this is quasi-advanced, it's really, I think most of us have either seen this one or have done it. So in this pivot table, you can see on the right-hand side, I can identify what my filters are, what my rows are, my values are, and we're going to just reproduce that using Power BI. So before I go over to Power BI, I did want to show you that we're going to use an Excel file, but fortunately for me, this Excel file happens to be synchronized with SharePoint Online. And I know that because you can see under this little thing called status on the screen you're looking at, that's the status of whether or not it's been synchronized. And so you can see this Excel spreadsheet is currently in the process of syncing, or there's a sync pending. So I'm going to use that fact, and instead of importing an Excel file into Power BI, I'm going to click on the word file here, go to the info, and I'm going to copy the URL path to this file. And this is, to me, this is totally cool because it's kind of turning my Excel file into some remotely hosted database. So let's do that one. Let's go ahead and connect the data to Power BI using that link that we created. So now I'm going to open up Power BI, the application that's on my desktop. And while that's opening, it takes a little while to open, I'm going to open up a notepad and show you the link that I copied. So in this link, it's really long, but at the end of the link, you'll see the reference to the file name, cod-viewer.v0, blah, blah, blah. But even at the very end, it says $web equals 1. I really don't know why they put that there, but that has to be deleted, the $web equals 1, before you import this to Power BI. So on Power BI, I can select a data source. I generally click blank report, but if I wanted to, I can import right here. So when I click blank report, now it gives me another visualization in the center that I can select a data source. Or I can click on get data, and I can select it from here. Just so many ways to select data sources. But again, we're going to choose the data source of web, because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste that link right there. And I click OK. And because I'm logged in to Power BI as my email address, jcarrillo, and that file was created under the same email address, it's taking me directly to the file. If I look at the file, I've got two worksheets, activity data and view, and I see those two worksheets here. So I'm going to choose activity data. It shows me a preview of the data, and I'll click load. All right. On the right-hand side, you can see there's three areas: filters, visualizations, and data. We're going to see that once our data loads, it will pop into that area of data. Kind of just getting myself familiar with the rows and values that we're going to have to deal with. And let this data load. See how that right-hand side, that data area opened up? That's because that's where our data is going to be loaded. So now I'm going to create a pivot table with that data. So there's the data. There's a lot of different areas I can choose, but I'm going to choose matrix. When I click on matrix, it adds a matrix to the report on the left-hand side, and I can now stretch it and move it. I always move things by clicking the three dots. Down below it says page 1. I'll just double click that and change its name to FAR 110. And now I can start working on adding rows and columns and values. So let's go with the rows. The rows, there was 3 rows that we had in there. We'll throw those in there. Power BI specifically will alphabetize all your data attributes. And sometimes that's nice, sometimes it's not, because in my mind, I'm working in Excel. I want to get the third column, whatever. Okay, so I've got the data in there. And then let's go look at the values Boy, we've got a lot of values. So let's start adding those values in. So I'm looking for those, remember, alphabetical type of things. And I'm going to drag that down to the word values, not columns. And again, this is very similar to what I would do in a pivot table. So you can see that as I'm doing that one, it added the word sum to that beginning balance, and that's because it recognized it as a general number. It could be that I misformatted the data and it recognized it as text. And if that's the case, I would just go back to that data model and change it to a number. All right, so as I'm adding these one by one, I do want to kind of come back to the fact that we clicked on a little picture of what looks like an Excel spreadsheet in the visualization area that has these blue lines on it. And Power BI calls that a matrix. I do not know why Power BI didn't call it a pivot table. So now we've got this word pivot table that's in Excel, matrix that's in Power BI, and I think that's not fair for Microsoft to do to us, but we have to live with it. Okay, so it looks like I've added everything. You can see that as I'm adding things, the report is just building itself, right? I don't have to think about it. It's using that matrix style to do all the summing. Let's go ahead and stylize our report a little bit. Now, one thing I'd love to do is just maybe make the background some nice fancy color. I'm thinking of a color like, I don't know, orange. Yeah, why not? Color canvas background, let's change it to orange. So I select orange, and my expectation is something's going to happen, and yet nothing happens. I didn't make you sit and wait for me to figure out what I was doing wrong. So after about 20 minutes, I realized that there was a transparency setting. And if I change that transparency setting, that's what it was. Seems kind of odd to me that they defaulted to 0 transparency, or 100% transparency, I should say. So I want to resize the report. Click on those 3 dots to select the report. I can now resize that report, kind of get it so I can see a little bit more of that orange. Move it around. I think that looks good enough. Oh, look at my labels. I mean, L08 Cost Center labeled, terrible name. I could change that in a couple of ways. And let's see how I'm doing that. So the first way is I could just, in the row section, double click on it, and I could type something in here, Cost Center. And by doing that, it will change it on the report. Bam, there it goes. And now I'll change this one, but instead of changing it in the value section, I'll change it actually at the data area. If I change it at the data area, then anytime I create a report with this data, it will have that new name. That's nice. But then I see that now it says sum of balance, and that's a bummer. So it looks like my little shortcuts aren't doing me too much value here. I'm going to have to go down here and get rid of that sum of balance and just change that to balance. As I'm changing these, and as I'm watching back at these little videos that I created, I'm realizing that that really should have been budget balance. And then there's another word called balance, which is the budget balance less transfers and activity. And I'm going to end up calling that one balance too. And then at the very end, there's a remaining balance, and I ended up calling that balance too. So I used balance 3 times on this report. And if we were in something like SQL would be like, you can't do that. You can't use the same name for 3 different columns. That's just confusing. Power BI can care less. They're like, this is just a report for people to look at. Power BI maintains the name of the columns and the references to those in its whatever back-end system, so it's not going to get confused. And so the fact that I'm confusing my customers they're okay with that, right? And I think you're going to be okay with it too. I'm hoping you're not upset with my balance being used. Okay, I've got this report. It's beautiful orange in the background. I cannot see anything because I'm going blind, so I want to try to make my font bigger. So I'm going to search around for that. And I think it's in the visualization area. And frankly, I think I searched around for this for 20 minutes before I finally just about gave up. And before I gave up, what I did was I went over to right next to the word general, there's these 3 dots. And I said, well, let me just expand everything. right here, expand all categories. And then I looked under the visual section and I started scrolling down. I stumbled upon options. Who would have known it would be under options, but there's this global font size. And so these are the kind of things that just as you use Power BI, you learn more. So we're assuming that the data is correct. We don't know yet. So let's take a look at that. Let's look at some of the numbers. Let's look at the global total. The global total should absolutely match, and it does. Perfectly matches. And then I'm going to pick a random number to look for. Looks like -5,585,813. And I'm going to see, what is that? That's cost center 650081. So let's go look at that one. The thing that I noticed is that Power BI is sorting all the cost centers by the number, as opposed to Excel didn't do that. So I got to go find it at a different place. And we're looking for the number to be exact to the penny. There should be no difference in the numbers. So, and they are. Perfect. So now that we've finished the report, you know, they always say save often. And what we're going to do is save it locally. And this is saving it to my local computer. I'm not publishing it to the web. I'm just saving it locally. And it's going to ask me where I want to save it. And gosh, I'll tell you, I get so confused by Microsoft these days. Where's my browser, browse folders and stuff? So I click on more options, still confused. Bottom, I see browse this device, and like, thank gosh, that's where I remember. This is the good old Windows XP environment that I like to see. And then I'll just go save it to wherever I want to save it. This local file now, if you wanted to, you can pass this file on to somebody else with Power BI, and they'd be able to continue editing your report. All right. So now that we've saved our local file, let's add a title to the report. There might be many ways to do this one, but I saw this little thing that said text box, so I just clicked on that, and then I just typed in there something I wanted to be a title. I usually put things in the title box that will remind me of what's going on. So not only is this a financial activity report, but I'm also going to put there that's linked to an Excel file. And it's just a way to remind me what the heck is going on. So I can resize that box just like any normal text editor. It's like, I feel like it's PowerPoint style. Maybe not as nice as PowerPoint, but it's kind of. I can now change the font size, and I click the little three dots to move things around. All right, I think this is looking good. I think that maybe that report is too tight up against the title, so I'll just click on the three dots of the report, drag down. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So now we're done. Always remember to save your report. Power BI will ask you if you want to save your report if you haven't. Sometimes. I'll show you an example where they don't do that. So I click Save My Report. I just click the Save button. I click Publish. It's linked right now up to my account, so it knows it's going to my place. And I'm going to use the generic My Workspace for this demonstration. And we'll talk about why you would want to use a different workspace once we start sharing the report. Okay, I can click Got It here, but notice they give me a little link that I can click on. It takes me right to the report. It's pretty nice. I use that sometimes. After a while, I think I've just gotten used to alt-tabbing back and forth between the report. But now I am online. I'm no longer designing the report. And I can see the report, and I'm looking at it, and I'm pretty happy with it. But notice that there's no filters. But if I click on the report, there's all my filters. And that's a common mistake that I make, which is by default, when you add by default, Power BI will add filters for you at the report level. I want to change those filters to the page level. I also want to see if I can update that title. I don't like that the way it looks. Okay, so here's the filters that it says filters on this visual. It doesn't let you delete those filters, so all you can do is hide the filters. So I'm just clicking the little eyeballs to hide those. And I'll just hide all of them. And then now what I'll do is I'll scroll down, and I can put filters on this page. And you'll see me start adding those here. Now there's also a filters on all pages, and the reason that that would be used is if in the future you're adding more financial reports to the same, more financial pages to the same report, kind of like worksheets to a workbook, and if you want the filters to propagate across any page that you're on, so maybe on page 1 is data, page 2 is the graphs, then you would put the filters on all pages, and that way any filter that a user selects would propagate to all pages. In this example here, I've only got one page, so whether I put it on filters on all pages or filters on page, it's producing the same results. All right, so I'm just doing the dragging things over. It is drag and drop. The screen gets a little bit busy, and so if you don't have a large monitor, it's kind of hard to work in Power BI. Maybe use that as a justification for your budget request to get a larger monitor. All right, program name in my organization is manager code, so I could just double click on it like I showed you before and change that. Ledger looks fine, your looks fine, but VE name, terrible. Let's just call that vendor. And scroll up, and we see object range looks fine too. I think this looks good. So we're going to publish it. Don't forget to save it though, right? And also, I forgot to clean up that title area. So did you see I clicked publish, and then it said, hey, you forgot to save it, click save. I'm going to cancel all that one. But that was nice. It reminded me I messed up. So here what I'd like to do is I'd like to take that white background and change it to a clear background. So I'm digging around trying to find this one. Let's see where I got. I did the expand all categories. That was a help, right? And I see background white. So I'm looking around for no background. It doesn't have it, but they do have a transparency. So that was it. That's how I did it. Now I want to change the text to white. I can't find that anywhere in here. So I just ended up reverting to standard word processor editing, and I click on the text in the box. Obviously, I'm looking around for a little longer, so I just highlight the text in the box. And then now I'm going to look for the little font color. Can't find it yet. It's sitting, I'm seeing it right there. Got it. Change it to white, and there we go. Looks good? I think so. So I'm going to hit publish. It says, hey, you didn't save your changes, and it's keep on reminding me, and that's good. And you're going to see how Power BI muffs up on me and doesn't ask me that question. All right, so let's take a look at this. I replace it. I go back here. Notice how it doesn't look any different. It's because I have to hit refresh on the page. So let's go back to that web page. All right, and I'm going to hit the refresh button, and now the title looks all perfect. Notice the filters right away show up because now they're on the page, not on the report. Look at the filters to see that they're all looking good. Beautiful. Nice. You can see how I can expand and collapse the filters by that little arrow next to the filter itself. Year. Oh, look at that. It's nasty. Why doesn't it just show me the years to select like manager code? It's like just shows me the manager code. I know what I did wrong on that one, and we'll fix it. Go back to the report. Let me go to that year filter. And you see how it says advanced filtering? Change it to basic filtering. Now it looks good. So now I can publish this report. I did not click save. It did not tell me to save it again. I just published it. Now I'm clicking save because I'm realizing after the fact. But I published it before I click save. If I refresh this report and I look over at that year, it's probably not updated. I shouldn't say probably. I know it's not updated. So I had clicked saved. I know I did click save after the fact, and I click publish again, and everything's good. Why Power BI didn't ask me to save it, I have no idea. I guess I've gotten so used to it asking me to save it, I just ignored the save button, but we won't do that again. Okay. Don't forget, you always have to refresh the report because of cache, but if I look over at the year now, beautiful. Nice. All right. Oh, I didn't notice that currency. All those currencies are showing up as just big numbers. Let's turn them with the dollar sign in front of them. Okay. So the way we do that is you go into Power BI and we're going to go to an area called Data Model or Model. And in that model, on the right-hand side, I can see all the fields that are inside my Excel spreadsheet. I select all of them and I can turn them all into decimal numbers. When I turn them into decimal numbers, I can now scroll down to make them into currency. See, and I can scroll down again. It's taking me a little while to figure this part out, but so they are currency. I mean, there are decimal numbers. They are currencies. It's got dollar value, but look at how many decimal places they have. So I got to go back to that model, and I need to select all those again. And then I'm using Shift click to select all. And then I notice that there is below the decimal number, decimal places is auto. I can now change that to 2, and that's going to make the numbers perfect, right? Okay, now I see this currency format. It's like squirrel, right? And I'm like, oh, let's change that to currency general. Why not? But when I do change it to currency general, it just changes my decimal places back to auto. And well, oh, it didn't, messed it up again, right? So let's go back to the data model. So I think that's what I feel like with Power BI is back and forth, back and forth. And let's change that decimal places back to 2 again instead of auto. So 1, 2. And you can see every time it says working on it, what it's doing is actually changing the visual to now reflect what I've done. And so here it goes. It's bang. Beautiful. I'm loving that. I'm going to save this report. I'm going to publish it. And let's go ahead and take one more look online to see how well we did. Remember, I got to select where I want to publish it. It's going to say you want to replace this. Yes, let's do it. And once this says it's updated, I can just Alt-Tab or go back over to my report, refresh it, and see what happens. So as we're looking over this, can you see the mistake that I made? It's not a mistake, but I just had failed to do one more thing. Those look good. The balance does not have a number for dollar sign format. So let's go fix that currency format on that first balance, which if you recall, it was like budget or something like that, budget balance. I think otherwise everything looks good. So I go to the data model. Why did I miss balance? Notice how it's not grouped with those other ones, so I didn't select that one. This one I'm going to try not to do that same mistake about changing it to currency. And there we go. And somehow it just automatically popped over to English United States. Good for me. Okay, I think we're done. Let's publish it one more time. I save it, publish it, select the workspace, do the replace, and I guess we'll just check it again because I want to make sure. And there's my dollar values. Everything's looking good. Good. I'm happy with it. I hope you're happy with it too. This is stored in my workspace, and there's actually 2 files that get created. One is the report itself, and then the other one is the data, or they call it the semantic model, but the data. So you can see that the report is represented by the picture of the graph, and the semantic model is represented by the 5 dots. All right, now we're going a little bit crazy. We're going to actually change the data and see if our Power BI report is linked to the data correctly. So this time I'm gonna do this in Excel, but I'm gonna use Excel Online because I was afraid that the syncing wouldn't happen fast enough with my desktop. It's nothing spectacular. I'm just working online. Going to this file that we were working on, and I'll go to the Activity tab, Activity Data, and I'm just gonna copy all of the data for 2020. I'll just paste it at the bottom of the report and give it 2025. And while I was doing this, I didn't realize that when I first selected it, I'm selecting on row number 8. So I missed rows, what would that be, 2 through 7, which is 6 rows. So I shouldn't say if. What I would presume is when I'm done with this one, 2025 will have 6 less data rows than 2020. And I wasn't intentionally meaning to do that one, but it will kind of be a good way to demonstrate what it looks like when you add new data and how the new data may not be exactly like the old data. So you can see I'm just putting 2025 on all that pasted data. All right, so that's done. I'll close that out. And theoretically, Power BI should update, theoretically. So I go to my workspaces and I go to, I'm going to refresh the data. Initially, you're going to have to manually refresh the data until you set up an automated refresh time. So let's do a manual refresh of the data. So it's the FAR 110 demo. I click on refresh and let's see what happens. The last time I uploaded this was at 4:42. That was when I published it from the report. I click refresh and I immediately get this warning error. And I look at this and I have no idea what this means. Contact support ain't going to want to talk to me. So I thought, well, let me just click refresh 10 more times. Maybe that'll fix it. It's not going to fix it. But I do it anyways, right? And I'm stumped. So I decide, okay, let me look at the words, the settings of this. And when I open this up, I do see the last refresh, but I see this other yellow issue. It says failed to test connection. So I click on that and I realize it's wanting me to log in so the report can see that Excel file. So I choose basic authentication, type my username and password, and this isn't going to work. And I went through and tried every combination and permutation of authentication method and privacy level settings, and I couldn't figure it out until I stumbled on authentication method of OAuth. So I'm going to change it right now to OAuth 2, and left public as the settings, and it immediately redirected me to a Microsoft login screen, and that's what it needed. And now it's saying, hey, your updates to the web data source have now been done. Now that I've done that, I can click refresh, expand that, and I can turn this on. And so now I can add a time, and I'll add it at 6 a.m. And I change my time zone to Pacific time. And I can choose it to send an email to specific context or to me, the semantic model owner, if there's any issues. And now let's scroll down and look at that. And I see the report. I see the data. I'm going to refresh the data and look at that little alert went away. And now you see the little dancing dots that are going around in circles. Very good. It refreshed at 4:51. So I'm really happy. If I go look at the report, and I remember I got to refresh the report. See, if I don't, it's got the cached report from before. Now I refresh the report and it should have 2 years. And if you'll see those numbers, 12534 and 12528, one of them is 6 less than the other, which, beautiful. What can you ask for? It worked out exactly like it's supposed to. Whew, we are moving along fast. And right now what we're going to do is we're going to embed this report, and I'm just going to go like off the deep end. I'm going to embed this report into Google just to show you that I'm not really limited by anything I can do. I am not suggesting that you do this, because if the data that you have has security to it, PII, this technique that I'm going to use, I can't guarantee you that it's truly protected. It's just more of a demonstration. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to open up my organizational Google account and go to sites.google.com. And I'm just going to create a website. So sites.google.com, if you've never done this before, you just click on new site, just as if you would click on new doc or new sheet. It's on the very far left, blank site. And then I'll just give it some type of random title. double click in it and type. And then now that I'm done with that one, I click in the main area and I can see on the right hand side there's an embed area, embed code. So I'll click on that and it's just asking me for the embed code. Let's go get it. Go over to my little waffle, go back to Power BI, doing everything that I used to do, and I'm going to scroll down now to my recent reports and I'll grab that report that I was looking at, which was FAR 110 demo. And then up at the top, under File, is where I'm going to get the embed code. Now, before I do that, I need to publish this report to the web. In other words, I need to make it public so that Google Sites has access to it. Here is what I meant by I don't know that I would trust the security of this one, but in this case, this is fake data, so I'm not at all worried about this. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this to the web. And then now I'm going to copy the iframe code. I'll just click on the word copy next to the iframe. I go back to the Google Sites and I try to paste this here, and it's like you can't do that because you have to paste it in the embed code area. Then I click next, shows me kind of a visual of the report, and I click insert. Now I can expand that little box so that it's big enough to see the report. That looks pretty good. Let's make it taller. Yeah, that's good enough. And then if I want to see it, like how does it look like if I expand it, I could as that Power BI report loads, I could click on the little expand button of the report. Okay, so now I'm going to publish it, and as I'm publishing it and typing the name of my website, I saw that there was this little area that says who can view my site, and this big word that says manage. So I'm going to click on that because I don't know if I really played with that much. And instead of giving everybody at Santa Clara County Office of Education, I'm going to change it to restricted. When I change it to restricted, I can now share that with specific people. And so just to maybe prove my point is I'll share this one. I publish it as that name, and now I can share it with my personal email address, carrillo.jim. Okay. All right, almost there. Let me just kind of take a look at this report. I think I do view published site so I can see what the report looks like as if a person were to look at it. I can see that there's like a little expand window. If I click on that one, it does a pop out. I'm going to do this one right here. Open a new window. So it shows me that I can see the report. Everything looks good. It's what I'm expecting. I'm going to copy this URL here, and we're going to try to open that with an incognito window. See if it really is somewhat secure. So I'll paste that. And what Google is going to say is, nope, that's a restricted site. You got to log in to see that site, and you got to be one of the people that the site is shared with. So Google is now authenticating me, and then it'll validate that my authorization. So you'll see me fumble a little bit here with my two-factor authentication. Gotta love two-factor authentication. That's sarcastic. And all right, once I finally authenticate, I should be now forwarded to this site, and I can see as some not random user on the internet, but as carrillo.jim, my Gmail account, I can now see that Power BI report that I created in Microsoft. So what that should tell you is that you only need the Power BI report to author reports and host them, not necessarily to share them. But in my case, my organization, Santa Clara County Office of Education, I share the reports through Power BI because it adds a level of security that I'm more comfortable with. And so the way I do that is I click on the word share on the report. I can type somebody's name like Lydia Cabrera, and it will recognize Lydia as a member of my organization. If I try to type somebody like carrillo.jim@gmail.com, it's going to say, you can't use that. They're outside of your organization. And so that's what I mean by that there's a level of security that this is added. I click send, but I'm not going to send. I'm going to just cancel this because Lydia doesn't want this report. Now let's go back to workspaces. I have three workspaces. I have my workspace, and then I have two other workspaces. The reason why Microsoft does this is you can share workspaces. Now here what you're seeing me do is fumble around because I'm on my workspace and there's no ability to share it. I go to District 4390 HR Analysis workspace and there's no ability to share it. And I'm like, why can't I share my workspace? Where did the sharing settings go? So I'm clicking around. I think I'm going to go over to the service account that I normally work in. Um, at SCCOE, we try to load all of our Power BI reports under one account so any one of us as analysts can work on it. So I'm going to log in as the service account. And when I log in here, you'll see I have a ton more workspaces. And when I click on any one of those workspaces, like 3502, up at the top right, it says Manage Access. So I could share a workspace. And what it dawned on me what was going on and why I couldn't share the workspace from my personal account is I only own one workspace in my personal account, my workspace. Those other two workspaces that I saw, those were shared with me, and I'm not allowed to share those with other people. So that's like, I was just given permission to see them. So what I'm going to do is go back to my account. And by the way, you can't share my workspace. I'm going to go ahead and create a new workspace. So I'll click on my workspaces, or I'm sorry, workspaces, and at the bottom, I'm going to click new workspace. That will then allow me to create whatever name I want. And so this way, when I'm creating reports for a specific department, instead of having to share the single report with them every time, all I have to do is share this workspace with them, and any report I put in that workspace, they'd have access to. I hope that makes sense. Okay. And so finally, before I let you go, we're going to do a quick database connection. It's going to involve a couple of steps. The first step is I had to record this recording from a Teams meeting that I had with one of the staff that works with me because my computer wasn't allowing it. So I just chose Get Data, and I chose SQL as the SQL Server data. Here you would type the server name, and you don't have to type the database because it's optional. And you're going to choose Import. Import will import the data into the report. Direct query is, in my opinion, a slower technique, and it just never worked very well as from what I wanted it to do. So you can see that once it connects the database, it will show you, the server. It will show you all the databases, and you could try to figure out where you're at. I usually, at the very top, there's a search bar. I can type in a search, and so we're going to search on for a table. A view. I like to use views called V_HR_integration. And as I'm typing this out, it's now reducing the results until it tells me, oh, this is probably what you want. You select it. It gives you a preview of the data. I might decide, yeah, this is what I want. I can click load. In this case, I'm realizing I wasn't working on an HR report. I was working on a account detail report. So we're going to go ahead and type in account detail. And I can see that there's looks like there's 3 of them that I can choose from. So I'll select this particular one. And then it shows me a preview of the data. I click load. And once we do that one, it is now set up just like I did with the Excel spreadsheet. Okay, once you've connected data to the database on your Power BI desktop, the problem is once you put that report online, how does the one that's online going to connect to the database? I mean, there's firewalls in place. Your system seems not going to let no Power BI report connect whenever it wants. So what Microsoft created was a thing called a gateway. And a gateway is just a little program that's sitting on some computer somewhere that's saying, it's sending out a message up to the cloud saying, hey, here I am, Power BI. If you need data, let me know and I'll get it for you. And then Power BI might be like, oh yeah, I need some data right now. And then the little gateway will go out and get the data and come back. And so because of that, you're not going to really want to put this on a laptop because people turn their laptops off. You'd want to put this on a computer that's always going to be on, or what's known as a server, and we put it on our database server. The other thing is when you install it, you're going to want to use an account like a service account. Otherwise, if somebody changes their password, it's going to stop working, blah, 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 blah. So you just Google search Power BI Data Gateway and download it. It's really a simple thing. Stick it on your desktop, wherever you want to put it, doesn't matter, downloads. Double click on it to open it. Real basic installation. And then once it's done installing, it's going to ask you a few pieces of information. I think one of them is going to ask you the email address to use with this gateway. Again, I'm just using my email address, but I think if we were doing this for our organization, I would have used the service account. You can do a fresh install. Sorry about that. This is just me authenticating. So you could do a register a new gateway, or you can migrate or restore. I have always done a register a new gateway, and you just type in the name of your gateway, and then it tells you to type a recovery key. And I never knew what the recovery key was for until one day my systems team told me, hey, we need to rebuild your server that you installed this on, and you're going to need to reinstall the gateway. And because I didn't know what the recovery key was, the only option I had was to create a new gateway, which meant maybe between 50 to 100 reports I had to go to and change individually on each report the gateway. If I would have remembered that recovery key and stored it in some password manager, I could have just restored the gateway. So this is telling me it's done. That was as hard as it got. We have connected it to a data source. We've put the gateway up, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go online, and I'm going to use a different this little part of the video is not working so well. You know what? Okay, so let's see if that video plays good here. So I am in Power BI, and I'm going to go over to a different semantic model called testing account, which I had created that was tied to a database. Here I'm going to go to settings, and instead of us having to type our username and password for the Excel file, now what I'm going to do is click on Gateway and Cloud Connections. And you can see that it's asking me how do I want to map this to it, and I'll be able to select a gateway that I've uploaded. Once I've done that and I click Apply, I should get a little message saying your updates to the gateway are connected have been applied. Everything's good. So very good. So that's done. Now I can hit look for that refresh area. I can turn on that configure a refresh schedule right here. And then I can add a time, and I'll add 6 a.m. And then I can down below I can do that semantic model owner who gets an email, or who these particular contacts. This is just to show that you could do it one way or the other. Click apply. I'm done with that. Go back to my workspaces. In this particular case, the workspace is called District 4390, no SCCE, no HR. Scroll back down to my report, which was, I forgot what it was called. Test accounting. And if I hit the refresh button, I should see those little dots dancing around, like circle. That means that the data is being refreshed. If I expand out these fields, I can see when the last time it was refreshed, and then see that update. So the last time it was refreshed was at 9:46:26, and it took about 4 minutes for it to refresh. 9:50:26. Actually, it took exactly 4 minutes. I can see that the next refresh is going to be on at 10 p.m. That's not what I put. What did I do wrong there? Let's go down to the refresh area. I don't know why I clicked there. It's this refresh area. And I do see 6 a.m. and I realized I did not set the time zone. So put that back to Pacific time. And then when I click apply on this one, go back to my workspaces, go back to that 4390 workspace with no HR, and then I should be able to see this. There's that 6 a.m. That looks perfect. And there you go. That is as hard as it gets. There's a lot to it, don't get me wrong, but it is totally something that is within your capacity, within my capabilities as well, and you can create your own Power BI reports.